So I'm gonna make this video again. I've made it in different formats before, but I didn't have any picture or anything with it. I was just talking on there. But one point of view I want to bring up is this. There is a conspiracy, sexual conspiracy. And the sexual conspiracy works like this: denigrating the sexual dynamic between a man and a woman through encouraging women to be in their masculine energy, which limits their ability to have vaginal orgasms from penetration, and then pushing the narrative that women do not have a capacity for vaginal orgasms from penetration, so that women will deal with men who they do not truly sexually desire, even if they have a capacity to, so that women aren't receptive to the dominance of a man. Because once a woman is in a place of being feminine and submissive, there is a certain aspect of leadership that comes along with it. So this is where the idea of misogyny comes from, and conflating polarity with misogyny or sexism, right? Because in my point of view, I'm not somebody who believes that a woman can't be masculine and dominant or a man can't be feminine and submissive. I believe that could happen. So it's not about sexism, but it's about understanding yourself and knowing what role you want to play. Now, what I will say is this: a woman has a higher capacity, right, for being feminine and submissive because she has a vagina, right? So she has a vagina, she has estrogen, she has those emotions, those hormones that cause her to be more emotional than a man typically has a higher capacity. Now, a woman can be more pragmatic than a man, right? This is something you have to understand. A woman's capacity for pragmatism is going to be higher than most men's, right? Which is the reason why a lot of women are cool with being in long-term relationships where they are pretty much prostituting themselves for provision. So that's the pragmatism, right? But what we need to understand is that a woman has a vagina. Within that vulva, right within that vagina, she has the G spot, the A spot, the O spots, the cervix, right? Now, what people are pushing these days is the idea of the clitoral body. Now, the clitoral body is a real thing. Those legs are something that are behind the vulva, and they wrap around the entire vulva behind it, right? So pressure that goes up against that is something that can help create orgasms, right? But what people do is they push this narrative that the G-spot doesn't exist. They leave out the existence of all other erogenous zones within the vagina, and they say that the G-spot is just part of the clitoris, so don't worry about the clitoris. If a woman can't have orgasm from penetration alone, that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with her, anything wrong with your sex life or your dynamic. What it just means is that you just need to focus on the clit. Focus on the clit. Focus on the clit. Listen, I love eating pussy. I love focusing on the clit. But one thing that I understand is that from my view of how sexual relationships work, if you're feminine and submissive, that means that you are lubricated for domination, which means that if you are feminine and submissive, you're going to reach a point eventually where you have a capacity to have orgasms from penetration alone, whether you're a man or a woman. Most people don't want to have this conversation because most people are afraid of being able to speak to and identify with and have conversations with gay men, right? I have friends that are gay men. I'm not somebody who's homophobic. Now, I have a balanced perspective of sex positivity, right? And my balanced perspective of sex positivity includes having an understanding of trauma, having an understanding of premature integration, and having an understanding of overstimulation. Now, all of those things are important in the conversation of sexual orientation. All of those things are important. And I do believe that a man and a woman can have a capacity to be somewhat inclined towards being homosexual, right? Or being some member of the LGBT community. But what I will say is that polarity should be the true foundation of relationships, and polarity works on more than just masculine and feminine, right? It's masculine, feminine, dominant, and submissive. It works on a quadrant. So what happens with a lot of women is this. A lot of women, they deal with men on a basis of seeing sex as something that they give a man in exchange for whatever resource he's providing, whether that's social, whether that's financial, whether that's emotional. There's some type of security that he's providing her that she's willing to trade access to her body for. She treats sex like a chore. She treats sex like a job, even if a man has the capacity to be dominant. And that man being emotional about his desire to have sex with that woman, being feminine about his desire to have sex with that woman, or being transactional about his desire to have sex with that woman, he will get on her program in order to deal with her. Now, this works for a variety of reasons. One is the denigration of the family, of the family system, of that foundation of a nuclear home. That's one of the primary reasons for it. But another reason for it is because this society that we live in is predicated on consumerism. The society that we live in is predicated on large corporations having the ability to use propaganda to manipulate people to spend money on what they want them to spend money for. Consumerism, capitalism, right? Now, capitalism does not work in the presence of masculine dominant men, because masculine dominant men will spend their money on what the fuck they want to spend their money on. Masculine dominant men are typically not going to be excessively frugal. They're not going to be impulsive about their spending. They're going to buy things that help push them towards the direction that they need to go in, and spend their money when it comes to their political views. They're going to spend money when it comes to things that they enjoy. They're going to spend money on things that benefit them. But in order to have a consumerist society, it's only going to work in the presence of having women who are transactional about sex and men who are transactional about sex, to where they are willing to put themselves in a position of financial power in order to attract women through having access to their resources. So a woman will be more easily manipulated by consumerism. So she's going to see the glitz and the glam, social media. She's going to see TV. She's going to see the, Real Housewives of Hollywood or Atlanta or whatever it is. Or she's going to see Love and Hip Hop. She's going to see TV. She's going to see these Instagram models, and she's going to say, these type of women are the ones who are getting the highest propensity of validation that goes across the board. Women, the nature of a woman is to desire the validation of men. Now, when a woman is masculine, instead of concentrating that desire for validation into her man so that they can build a strong relationship and foundation, she's going to become somewhat of a people pleaser or an attention whore. And when she does this, she's going to split up her desire for validation amongst multiple sources. And when she splits up her desire for validation amongst multiple sources, she is going to use this little bit of attention she gets here and there, do things to get that attention in a way that may not be becoming of herself, so that she can have a steady influx of validation that soothes her ego and soothes her insecurities. So that's like women twerking online. Now, the men who slide on her inbox because she's twerking online oftentimes aren't going to be men that she wants, and it's oftentimes not going to be men that she needs. You get what I'm saying? But because there are so many men who are liking that post, who are loving it, who are reacting, who are sharing it, who are in her inbox, who are in her comments, making her feel beautiful, making her feel desirable, making her feel good about herself, she's going to take that validation and use that to soothe her ego. Now, a woman who's feminine and submissive is not feminine and submissive with everybody. She's going to be feminine and submissive towards her man. And by being feminine and submissive towards her man, if this is a man who's masculine and dominant, who has leadership skills, then her desire for his approval, her desire for his validation is going to be something that gives them ability to be on the same page and move forward with a direction that's going to lead towards sustainable homes. It's going to lead towards sustainable relationships with forward movement. But many women get overstimulated with junk food. Now, what many women don't understand is that their masculine energy is what limits their ability to have vaginal orgasm from penetration on a consistent basis. Now, a masculine dominant woman can reach that place. And this is where sex toys come in. I'm not somebody who's anti-sex toys, but there is something that people need to understand. There are certain vibrations, there are certain frequencies that come out of these sex toys, and I've seen something about it recently. I'm not an expert on it. I'm not somebody who's anti-sex toys, but I was having a conversation with a woman that I dealt with. And she was telling me, I sent her this post where somebody was talking about the rose or whatever it was. And a woman went to the doctor and said that her egg count was getting lower, or that her periods were getting longer because of the magnetic field or something like that was coming off of it. And she was exposing the rose toy. Now, me, I don't have an issue with sex toys. I like sex toys. But something that I understand is this. The goal is to replace and to denigrate the value of a man sexually if this is a man who is masculine and dominant, right? So it's cool for a man to be feminine and dominant. It's cool for a man to be the type of man who has no emotional discipline, who has no impulse control, but simply is a dog. He simply is a man who doesn't think with his higher mind, and it's simply a man who goes around seeking to fuck anything that moves, or any woman that he views as attractive and that he views as a woman on a pedestal that he wants to knock off, conquer, and then keep it pushing. These men are liabilities, and oftentimes these are going to be some men who also are going to accrue resources to themselves to be flashy, to attract a woman with things that appear feminine so that they can get that woman, so that they can do what they do. But after they get bored, they're going to move on. It's a lack of leadership skills that go along with it. Now, there's nothing wrong with having nice things. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that for most women, Their ability to have vaginal orgasms is stifled by their transactional mindset when it comes to sex. Remember, feminine energy is what lubricates submissiveness. Masculine energy stifles submissiveness. Masculine energy concentrates and structures dominance. Feminine energy corrupts dominance. When we understand this aspect of things, then we can have a better understanding about how orgasms work. Orgasms work on the basis of your dominant sexual ego versus your submissive sexual ego. So when a woman is having sex with a man and she's masculine submissive, which means she's trading her body in order to have access to a man financially, socially, or emotionally, she's in a position where she's in her dominant sexual ego. She's focused on the pleasure that she's giving this man because that is the resource that she is trading in order to get the resources that she wants in return. And when a woman is in that position, she's not focused on the pleasure she can receive. She's focused on the fact that she's giving pleasure. She likes the validation that she's getting, and because she likes the validation that she's getting, she's trying to return that validation through giving that man pleasure. So understand this. Masculine submissive women tend to have a dominant sexual ego. Now, this is something that's going to cancel out. Now, back in the day when there were relationships where both people were masculine submissive, both people may have worked and had a lifestyle where somebody could work a plant job for 40 years, reap the benefits of that plant job, and still be able to work and live in their household and just be cooperative with one another, right? But there were men who were feminine dominant, who would be masculine submissive at the home, where they would be transactional, but then they would lie to the woman, then they would go cheat, and then would go do a variety of things that would be, hurtful. Or they would be feminine dominant with their woman, and then they would, the woman would have to be the source of structure. He would do whatever the fuck he wanted to do, and the woman would have to be the one who set boundaries and set expectations, right? But he would be the one in control to a certain extent. Now, by that man not receiving those orgasms, by the man not receiving, that woman experiencing a certain level of pleasure, by that woman not being able to tap into her more sexual energy with him, it put him in a position where he had to outsource his need for his dominant sexual ego to be met. Understand what I'm saying? And this is where the Madonna whore complex comes in. A man will find a woman who he views as masculine or logical. Not masculine, she'll look feminine, but she'll be logical in his desire for him, in her desire for him. And because she was logical in her desire for him, it gave him the ability to have structure. It gave him the ability to sit his ass down somewhere instead of running off all the time and not being able to put any roots down. And from a man taking this perspective, he'll say, this woman, this is a quote unquote good girl. This is a nice girl. This is the woman that I should be with. And when a man takes that perspective, he is denigrating his own masculinity. He's denigrating his own dominance in order to do what he thinks is the quote-unquote right thing. This is why I say that I believe in polarity, but I don't believe in traditional dating and traditional marriage. Something I always believe is this: there's no substitute for good D and guidance. So what many women will do is they will split up their desire for sexual energy from a man to a man who they view as someone who goes against their spiritual beliefs, because religion plays a part in this. It'll be a man who goes against their spiritual beliefs and their worldviews and their mindset, and they will deal with him for a confined and concentrated space of time to where she will get sexually overstimulated, emotionally overstimulated, and that man will be the peak of her fantasies. But when she's ready to settle down and have a more elongated, more sustainable relationship, she'll deal with the man who she doesn't view as dominant, who she doesn't view as a particular way, so that she can feel like she can have her emotions involved without being taken control over by the fact that the man is sexually dominant. So once a woman is in a position where she is feminine and submissive, which means that she enjoys sex for the sake of sex, right? And that she enjoys a man's leadership and his dominance for the sake of it, and not something that she does transactionally, she's in a place where she has lost power. And many women fear this because of the men in their lives who have had bad leadership skills. But most of these men who had bad leadership skills were feminine dominant men. They wouldn't do right unless a woman was putting their foot on their neck, unless a woman was leveraging sex to get their way, unless a woman said, well, I want to be married, so I'm not ready to, I don't want to keep having sex with you because I want to be married. And that will cause a man to denigrate his own dominance, and that'll cause a man to put himself into a position in a scenario to where he would stop dealing with and treating a woman on a basis of her desiring sex from him. Because something that people need to understand is this: Vagina is going to be more valuable than the average dick. But good dick to a woman is going to be more valuable than pussy. Understand that. That's just a general rule of thumb. Good dick is going to have more power in it than vagina. Now, the average dick is not going to have the same value as a vagina. Because remember, V equals V and P equals P or P, which means vagina equals value and penis equals power or provision. And most women, when they get into a long-term relationship, they're getting into a long-term relationship on the basis of a man who is providing provision in exchange for a woman giving him access to her body. And this masculine energy, this transactional mindset, this is the thing that limits women's ability to have orgasms from penetration. So understand this in the same way that, see, I've had conversations with gay men, right? And one thing that I've noticed in some of the conversations that I've had with gay men is that a pure bottom can be in a position to where he desires penetration and can orgasm from penetration and may never truly desire to utilize his penis because he gets more pleasure out of being penetrated. Women can do the same thing, but a woman has a higher capacity for being submissive because she has more spots and more erogenous zones that can be activated to create orgasms. A man has a penis that is naturally grown on his body, which means that not only can he give pleasure, but he can receive pleasure, and validation can be given to the woman from the pleasure that she gives. But not only that, but his natural penis that is connected to his body can give that woman a level of pleasure. Now, this is something that can only occur within penetrative sex. A man's testosterone gives him a certain level of aggression. A man's body structure, his bone structure, his frame, his upper body strength gives him a higher capacity for dominance. So there are people who are going to be more predisposed due to their hormonal makeup, due to their body build, due to their mindset, due to the conditioning of how they were raised. They're going to be more disposed towards being on the homosexual side of the spectrum. But what we need to understand is that many people are just there because of the mindsets they experience. So let's say a woman, she's in her masculine energy. When a woman's in her masculine energy, that means her cup is low. Most women who are in their masculine energy aren't naturally masculine women. They're traumatized. They've gone through a bunch of bad experiences that cause them to feel uncomfortable with giving up control. Now, when a woman's in her masculine energy, she desires feminine energy from a man when it comes to sexual acts, which means it may be more focused on acts that could be considered foreplay, which means she may more so just want, for him to perform oral sex on her, or she may more so like kissing more than sex. She may like cuddling more than sex. She may like fingers more than sex. She may like a variety of sex acts that are not penetrative sex acts over penetration because she is not comfortable and fully opened up to experiencing pleasure from being dominated, from being penetrated, from being stretched, right? Now, what can occur in this place and how this can often lead towards homosexual relationships and lesbian relationships in women is that most men are not going to have a capacity to exceed the level of feminine sexual energy that a woman can give another woman. Right? But this goes back to cup theory. That's what happens when a woman's cup is low. Now, if a woman's cup is high and she's still homosexual, she's still lesbian, then it's probably more so inclined to who she really is as a person. But that's where that woman transitions into being masculine and dominant. But most women are not going to be both masculine and dominant, because most women do not desire to do the level of thinking that it takes to be a true leader in a relationship and think for more than one person. Most women are not going to have the leadership skills to give a man the freedom to be emotional and to be feminine without losing attraction and respect for that man in a way to where she no longer desires him. So what many women do is they'll get to a place where their cup is really low, and from that place, they'll desire feminine sexual energy. Now, a man, he's too rough, he's too tough, he's too strong for him to be able to adequately give her that feminine sexual energy without desiring to be reciprocated through him having the ability to penetrate that woman. So when a woman's in a place where she doesn't desire to be penetrated, she's going to have a mindset to where she may be in a place where she feels like having sex with a man is giving something to him. And when a woman feels that way for a consistent enough period of time and she doesn't feel like she's reciprocated or isn't receiving the adequate pleasure that should go along with that, then she'll get to a place where it's like, you know what, I don't really feel like having sex. It feels like a chore, right? And when she feels that way, oftentimes it'll be a woman who's willing to give her feminine energy that's going to be softer, because a woman's going to be softer than a man. Now, there are some men who can eat pussy better than women. You know, I've heard women tell stories of men. I've had women tell me that. I've had homeboys who women told them that they eat pussy better than the women that they've been with. I've been with women who have been with women and they never had an orgasm from having their pussy eaten, but they did with me, right? Now, these are things that can occur, but these are more so exceptions and not the rule, right? But oftentimes, a woman may not truly experience vaginal orgasm from penetration unless she's dealing with a feminine dominant man, because his inconsistency, the games that he plays, the fact that he doesn't respect her boundaries, it goes beyond her masculine energy to get her to be feminine in that moment. But as soon as she leaves that moment, now she reinterprets the experience in a different way, to where now she does not trust the man, although this man is giving her a high level of pleasure. So what we have to understand is that masculine energy is what keeps women from being able to have vaginal orgasms from penetration. More than anything else, this is the number one key factor. It's the number one factor in it. And I've studied this out with women who I've dealt with for shorter periods of time, more consistent periods of time, and for longer periods of time. And when a woman taps into her feminine energy, her ability to have vaginal orgasm from penetration is something that is unlocked. When she gets to the place where she's willing to give up control, from a place of desiring to give up control and not giving up control because she feels like there's something she can get out of it. And not giving up control because a man wants her so much that he takes control in a way to where it can hurt her and put her in a position where she feels like she was violated. There are many women out here who have their first vaginal orgasm from penetration through being violated. Right? So this is something we need to understand. The perspective I come from is from polarity and sexual integration, right? Something that needs to be understood. As a man, you should not be allowing a woman to take you to a place sexually that you aren't taking her as far as your submissive sexual energy. Once you get integrated, you can go there. Like, I haven't done it, but I'm not even somebody who's against a man getting prostate stimulation from his woman. Because once that woman has reached a certain place of, you've reached a certain peak of polarity, if you do not tap into a certain level of your own submissive sexual energy, then you may be liable to stray because you're not receiving enough pleasure in the case that you've been overstimulated. So let's say a man's masculine and dominant. When you're dominant, you're not focused on your own pleasure as much, because dominant means that you're the primary giver of pleasure and the primary receiver of control. And when you're masculine, that lack of femininity, it takes away from some of the pleasure that you experience as well. So you have to be able to integrate that later on, but you shouldn't lead with that. You should lead with dealing with the woman in a way to where she's receiving pleasure from your penis, right? You integrate those other things as the scale of sexual attraction gets higher. So on a 9 level, then you giving her that oral sex and things like that are going to be things that add to the sex life. That foreplay is going to be something that adds to the sex life. That feminine energy, making, that waiting, right? Making her wait for it. Now she feels like she's being edged. Now she feels like she's going through pleasure denial. Now she's at a place where she desires it actively. So when she desires it actively, she's in a position to where when she finally gets it, she enjoys it on a greater basis. But what happens on a 7 level of sexual attraction, which is where most relationships are between the 6 and 7 range, on a 7 level of sexual attraction, a woman is merely trading you having the ability to penetrate her because you gave her feminine sexual energy, which means that she'll have sex with you, but you have to eat her pussy first. And I know this sounds contrary to conventional wisdom, but this is how it works a lot of the time. I know many women talk about going DJ, and I don't have an issue with the woman who's playing with the clitoris during sex. But I do not consider myself truly sexually compatible with a woman unless she's able to have vaginal orgasm for penetration. And what society does is it gaslights men about this and says that men are insecure. See, there's a difference between having insecurities within a person and insecurities within your sexual dynamic. This opens the door for the non-stick principle. I can't tell you how many women I've seen or how many women I've dealt with who were with a man for years on end, never had a vaginal orgasm from penetration, but then very shortly afterwards, they deal with the man on a short-term basis who's a fuck buddy. And because he wasn't invested in her, because of her high level of sexual attraction, she put herself in a position where she was able to have vaginal orgasm for penetration relatively quickly. And this creates a non-stick principle to where oftentimes when a woman experiences this, no matter what her mindset was before she got into that situation, she feels different about the man who she was with before, and he becomes less of a figure of who she really desires in her mind because he can't give her that same level of pleasure. And some women have these experiences and then they deal with a man who can't give them those experiences. But because they were transactional with the man due to their lack of attraction and because of their lack of respect, their lack of desire for his validation, it puts her into a position to where now that's something that's in the back of her mind. Now there's something that she doesn't desire to do. So this is Coach Brodie talking about how masculine energy prevents women from having vaginal orgasm from penetration. I'm out.